Next slide, please. So in college, and actually again, college and also again in my early years after college when I was working in Detroit after I met Amy, I experienced more outbreaks of alopecia, and they came in a similar way to the previous outbreaks, but it was becoming more predictable and cyclical. I pretty much had a good understanding what was going on, and I was grown up enough to know that that was it for me. I knew this was, I was basically had accepted that this was my life's challenge. And I no longer questioned God's grace or His presence in my life. I never again used medication to treat it. I also never trusted salons or barbershops. By this time I moved on from my hometown, and I didn't have the option of going to this barber that I had as a kid. So I did my own haircuts. Learned to cut my hair just right. Determined never again to let this thing keep me down. I finally developed the tools necessary to keep it under control. I finally had the solution to the condition that had plagued me my whole life. Next slide, please. Yeah. I had the solution. Yeah. The comb over. Yeah, I think you know who this is. Next slide. And also about 5 cans of Aquanet hairspray, extra super hold. Okay, next slide. Yeah. So anyway, each morning, this is for illustrative purposes only. Yeah. Each morning, I washed my hair, got up, washed my hair, and engaged in a complicated process of blow drying my hair, making sure it got fluffed up just right. And of course I used extra volume shampoo. And then using an array of dual mirrors, I checked the back of my head. And I got one mirror here, and I've got the bathroom mirror here. And I'm checking the back of my head, and I get the hairbrush, and I brush the hair in overlapping directions, trying to cover any exposed skin. Most of it was always on the back of my head. So I'm covering it up, make sure it's fluffy and everything. And once I got the hair positioned just right, I'd spray the first coat of Aquanet, making sure that even coat, keep it even distance in an organized spray pattern, and making sure not to overspray on any one area. And once it tacked up, and I'd spray the second and sometimes the third coat. And after a few minutes of drying time, the resulting plastic hair helmet had solidified and was ready to stand up to most of the challenges of the day. So next slide, please. Yeah. By the way, I'm gonna need that prop pretty soon. I kept a thorough mental inventory of each strand of hair and determined which hairs needed to be trimmed and which ones needed to be allowed to grow longer to maintain the integrity of the hair helmet. Once every 2 to 4 weeks, I would get out the dual mirrors once again and do a little trimming and pruning.
Don't forget the trash bag in the sink.
Oh yeah. The trash bag in the sink. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because I always left a little hair in the sink. So anyway, it didn't look great. Didn't look great. In fact, I hated the way my hair looked, but it did the job. Next slide, please. Of course, I had to be careful of the wind and weather and any physical activity that might allow the hair helmet to come undone. And driving with the windows down was definitely no without a hat. And as Amy knows, I'm not very terrific at bowling. Next slide, please. This is the best.
That's crazy.
Yeah, well, as the alopecia progressed, I had to become more creative in making use of the hair that I had left.
Is that you?
Yeah. Like I said, these are for illustrative purposes. Yeah. Hey, I wish I could grow a beard. I wish I could grow a beard. Yeah. The important thing is nobody could see the skin. That was the most important thing. Next slide, please. These are, I actually began doing sketches of myself in Photoshop using the tablet, the famous tablet, and trying to design various new styles for maintaining the comb over. So these are a couple. This is the Gene Wilder here, and then this is the what do you call this? The Mao, the Chairman Mao. Yeah. So. Anyway, yeah, always had to be prepared for any turn for the worse, and always find new potential sources of available hair. Next slide. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, 2005 was the last time I had a full head of hair, and by 2006, the first new spots were beginning to show up. I continued to develop and refine the hair helmet, but by this time the alopecia hit me a little harder and a little faster and more severely than before. It became more difficult to maintain the hair cover, and quite frankly I was getting tired of dealing with it. It was really becoming a burden on me. But the funny thing is, at this point, I felt nothing. No fear, no despair, but also I felt no peace. I'd given up on that a long time before. And that's when I began to realize that I'd become a slave to the hair helmet. I began to realize that I had allowed this thing to have dominion over me and control so many areas of my life, and I wanted to go outside again. I wanted to feel the wind blow. I wanted to jump in the water and go swimming. I wanted to ride my bike down the hill. And one thing I'd always had in the back of my mind was, as far back as 8th grade, when I met Mike Powers, was the nuclear option, which was to shave it all off. And I say nuclear because, unlike most people, I knew it was a one-way ticket and with no return. I would never be able to grow it back again. I had no idea what I might look like. In fact, I didn't know whether I'd be happy with the way I looked or whether I'd just be more of a freak than before. I had no idea what people would think of me, even the people closest to me, even Amy or my parents, my family. I didn't know what they would think of me. I thought about Mike Powers and the confidence and peace he had in himself. And in some ways I was jealous because he didn't have a choice. God took all his hair. And I, on the other hand, seemed to be always right on the edge. God always seemed to take away just enough hair, but never enough to justify in my mind the need to shave it off. I always had some hair, but I would always have to be the one to make the choice of whether to keep it or let it go. In high school and in college and as a young adult, every time the alopecia returned, I promised myself I would shave it off, and every time I would chicken out and return to the safety of the comb over. By the end of 2006, I began to pray and meditate seriously about shaving my head. And by that time I was 31 years old. Many people I knew had already lost their, people my age had already lost their hair to normal male baldness. and